Can I hand over to you?
Well, thank you very much. Would you prefer me speaking from here?
Where you can speak from wherever you like.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. First of all, I wish to thank Global Witness for arranging this event. I thought that people from the NGO community often don't get a chance to put vigorous questions to heads of state and to put us on the hot seat. So I offered Global Witness to come and do this, and I'm thankful that you're all here. And I'm going to be very short because I'm hoping that I can be much more pointed in my answers to questions that you may have. I don't want to make a speech that you may not be particularly interested in. I'm asked to speak about governance and transparency. But before I speak about the forest, let me just spend a minute telling you a bit about my country. We gained independence from the UK in 1966. And since that time until 1992, we didn't have any democratic elections. It was only in 1992, after the involvement of President Carter particularly, that we saw a return to democracy. In that period, we lost a significant part of our population, the best minds. They migrated to the US, in particular, US and Canada. We ran up one of the highest per capita debt in the world. We lived above our means for a very long time. So by the time we got into office in 1992, we were using 94% of revenue to service debt, 20% of revenue to pay wages and salaries in the public service. So when you pay debt and wages and salaries, that was 114% of revenue. We have and I've seen the power of NGOs, and I must digress a bit here. In the late 1990s, I came here, I went to Birmingham with Ann Pettifor and some others when they started the Jubilee movement. And I saw how the power of the NGOs made a big difference in getting multilateral debt relief on the agenda of the G7 at that time. And so we got quite a bit written off. We paid back 1.5 billion. In the first 14 years of our structural adjustment policies, we paid back more in debt servicing than we received in loans and grants from abroad. We practically financed our structural adjustment program. Today, our debt stock now has reduced from 750% of GDP to about 45% of GDP. We're using 4% of revenue to service debt, down from 94%. We didn't have audited statements for the country, since we're talking about governance and transparency, for 10 years prior to the assumption of office. Every single year from 1992, we have had audited accounts for the country tabled in the National Assembly. We recently had constitutional reform. We strengthened those provisions. Now the audit office reports directly to a committee chaired by the opposition in the National Assembly. There are many other governance features there, but I don't want to spend time on those, including 5 constitutional commissions that are called the Rights Commission on indigenous people, rights of children, gender, human rights and ethnic relations, because of our peculiarities. Very few constitutions in the world have constitutional commissions enshrined in them that have powers of sanction over the executive. And but that's for another moment. In my interaction over the past several years on the whole issue of REDD, first of all, I made this offer to work with Tony Blair, to say that we are prepared to deploy our entire rainforest if the right incentives could be found, deploy it in service of climate change. We didn't get much of a response. Then I raised it with the current government. They were pretty lukewarm, and I hope I'm not saying anything politically incorrect, because it's the truth. And more recently, we found a really good partner with Norway. But we thought that preserving the rainforest and growing our country that is ensuring our people prosper, do not have to compete with each other, that they can be compatible and they can be structured in a single strategy for the country, hence our low carbon development strategy. There's this agreement, and I'm going to jump straight to the agreement with Norway. But before I do this, I've met two groups of people since the last 3 years, particularly from the NGO communities. Those who recognize the importance of rainforests as part of the solution to climate change, who recognize that it's going to be difficult to get a REDD agreement in place, but who are prepared to work for that agreement. And then there's another group who can only find everything wrong with REDD and why it can't work. So there are two groups of people I've had. The most common things that keep coming up are, will the money be well spent? Can the countries really deliver on their promises? Will this be real? Would they not take our money and then cut down the trees? Would some corrupt government run off with the money? These are questions that have been out there and that are real questions, real concerns. So in our agreement with Norway, I think we have sought to answer all of these concerns. First of all, we have a national scale model because we're talking about the entire rainforest in Ghana. We're not talking about a small pilot in some country where you can have extremely good practices within the pilot area and the rest of the country or the rest of the forest could be degraded or denuded. Secondly, we're talking about payments based on performance. Thirdly, we're talking about a rigorous system for measuring performance. That is an MRV system, a world-class MRV system, the development and deployment of that system. Fourthly, we're talking about a transparent, we've defined in this agreement, a transparent, accountable financial transfer mechanism that could be audited and could withstand international and local scrutiny. Fifthly, I might be losing count. We're speaking about the institutionalization here of a multi-stakeholder participation in the development of our REDD strategy and throughout its implementation. Sixthly, we're talking about safeguarding indigenous people's rights, making sure that if they opt in with their lands, they do so only with their free, prior, informed consent. And even if they don't opt in, they still benefit from the resources that the country can garner through the state forest, that their land rights and other traditional rights would be protected. These are some of the issues that I've heard most often. We're going to have international monitors on the ground to look at all the phases, all of these phases, to see that they comply with some international standard. So I think this model, the agreement that we signed with Norway, can give answers. It may not be a perfect agreement because we're still all learning. And as was pointed out, this is the first such agreement in the world. And it may evolve over time, but it seeks to answer all the issues that have been raised about REDD in the past. So I just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.